Your vault is now worthless! Or at least, that's what a lot of people are saying. Matter of fact, some have even gone as far as to delete almost their entire vault. We're actually in the midst of our own series, Vaultflation, where we essentially go through and delete multiple weapons. And yes, we have made it to a whopping 653 out of 700 so far. No lie, we gotta speed this up, guys. At this rate, by the time we get to the number that we need to get to, Destiny 4 will be rolling out. Now, why are people deleting their vaults? Well, since the embargo has lifted and Edge of Fate details have been rolling out, the new loot system has been revealed to us, the new armor system, how exotics are going to change, how tiers for weapons are also going to be a thing. Many people across the community have said this is straight up sunsetting. And in some ways, I get this sentiment. It's almost like a soft sunset, if you will. However, in today's video, I wanted to look at all the new information we have so far regarding new weapons, from new armor, as well as new stats being introduced with Edge of Fate, and give you our answer on whether or not you should in fact nuke your vaults. First, let's do a very quick recap as to what is actually changing. Now, this is something that has been broken down in length from many folks. We recently actually watched Benny's video going over the tiered loot, archetypes, build sets, so if you want to check out that video, you can. But let's start with weapons first. As we've known for quite a while, weapons have been reworked to have different weapon tiers, from tier 1 up to tier 5. Now, a tier 1 weapon is your standard weapon, with one perk in the third column, one perk in the fourth column, nothing being enhanced. So essentially, the normal drops you've seen over the years. Tier 2 are weapons that have enhanced traits in the third and fourth column. And then there's tier 3. These are weapons that have enhanced perks, but also have 2 perks in columns 3 and columns 4. Even the weapon mods for this tier are enhanced as well. These are most similar to shiny weapons from, say, things like Rite of the Nine, which Bungie did actually confirm would be the equivalent of tier 3 weapons, which is a whole other can of worms that we're not going to get into in this video. Next up is tier 4, which sees every perk, including the barrel and mag perks, being enhanced. And then lastly, we have tier 5 weapons. Again, they have every perk enhanced, but this time it will include the origin traits as well. Now, this is actually going to come with 3 perks in columns 3 and 3 perks in columns 4. Tier 5 weapons will also have unique animated shaders that you can equip, as well as special on kill effects like sweaty confetti, for example. And no, this won't take up your mod slots. We also learned in the most recent TWAB that adept weapons are actually getting phased out. When the expansion launches, they will be replaced with this new gear system, with tier 5 weapons being the new item to chase. Now, next up, we have the more significant of the 2 changes, and that's the changes to our armor. As we've already covered, armor is getting a complete rework with the launch of Edge of Fate, with stats like mobility, resilience, and recovery being deprecated and reworked into 6 new stats. We have weapons, health, class, grenade, melee, and super. Now, we've known about these changes for quite some time, but we now know that the equivalent stats we currently have for each new stat. When the Edge of Fate launches, our old armor will be changed to reflect these armor changes. So, for example, our current mobility stats will be changed to the weapon stat come July the 15th. Yes, you heard that right. The stat that gives you increased weapon damage is going to be tied to our current mobility stats, which means for my fellow Titans out there, we're kind of screwed. I'm just being honest, guys. I have literally no mobility stat armor pieces. Whereas like my hunters out there, the hell with y'all. You guys are probably sitting high and mighty right now with your high mobility stats on all your armor pieces. Now, as for the other stats, resilience is now health, recovery is class, strength is melee, discipline is grenade, and intellect is super. So what this means is you can actually start farming for some gear right now if you know what you want with the new armor system, which is actually what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be farming for high mobility stat armor pieces. Granted, I'm going to be actually going for the new armor pieces come Edge of Fate, but we're going to have a quick turnaround going into the day 1 raid that I kind of want to have a decent armor set going into the expansion to be prepared for that day 1 raid. We'll have an entire prep guide on this, guys, but the main thing is look over at your ghost mod, hit that mobility option, and see if you might pick up a few stat pieces going into Edge of Fate. Now, we also have a slightly better understanding of what each stat actually does now. For example, the super stat improves the super energy gained from damaging targets, as well as the amount of super energy gained from any external sources like exotic perks or picking up orbs. But get this, it has no effect on your base super cooldown like it does currently, meaning that timer listed on your super will always be that timer. This also increases super damage as we go from 100 to 200, as this will increase linearly from 0% up to a whopping 45% at 200 stats, which is why so many people are saying right now they're going to be looking for armor sets that are high in both mobility, that being weapons, going into the next expansion, and high in intellect. That way you can net yourself more super energy and, of course, a hell of a lot more damage. Now, armor-like weapons are also going to have a tier associated with them, although this time it seems like higher tier armor is certainly more important than a tier 5 weapon. This is because the higher tier the armor is, the better the stats will be overall, with tier 1 being anywhere between 48 to 53, and then tier 5 being between 73 and 75, on top of stat tuning. Now, you're hearing these values right, guys. 73 to 75 at tier 5. Now, stat tuning will only be available for tier 5 armor, and this allows you to add a tuning mod to your armor like balance tuning, which will slightly raise the 3 lowest stats on your armor. But there's also other tuning mods which will allow you to raise one stat by +5 while also lowering another stat by -5. Now, which stat is increased is determined by these 3 lines next to a given stat, which seems to be completely RNG as to which stat that is on your armor. Now, most of us are going to be ditching our current armor sets, as it's not just the higher stats that we're going to be going for, it's also the set bonuses associated with these new armor pieces. We recently talked about the Bushido set with the 2-piece bonus that heals you on kills with freshly drawn or reloaded weapons. Then you got the 4-piece, which makes it so that your bow, shotgun, and sword fighting blows temporarily reduce incoming damage, and damaging targets with those weapons extends the effect. This is just one example of the different set bonuses we'll be able to earn in the Edge of Fate. Now, as you may have expected, this will not apply to our current armor. If you want these new set bonuses, you have to go out and you have to farm it. Same goes for armor tiers. We may be able to pre-farm for stats that we want right now, but we're actually gonna have to go out and get those higher tier armor sets after the expansion releases. Now, this is where you start to see some discourse. Tier 5 weapons are great. Look, man, you give me something shiny to chase, I'll chase it. But do I think they are absolutely necessary? To me, it really just comes down to the weapon itself. For instance, if I'm sitting there looking at an aberrant action, and I've got a tier 5 aberrant action, but its perk rolls are, say, Ambitious Assassin and Demolitionist. Or I got a tier 3 aberrant action, and its perk rolls are Heal Clip and Incandescence. Well, guys, all day long, we're gonna choose the tier 3 roll. And I would say when you look across your vaults, even though, yes, your loot may be quote-unquote lower tiered, that being tier 2 or tier 3 at best, a god roll is still a god roll. And don't get me wrong, having the highest tier will be a flex, especially if it's the highest tier with its animated shader. But from a gameplay perspective, of just you and your ability to perform, perk combinations all day long are the most important factor. For instance, the only way people are going to actually ditch Rose inside of Crucible is if Bungie literally comes out and nerfs Rose, or they give us an alternative that is just substantially better than Rose, which is going to be very difficult to do considering the unique factor of Rose. It's lightweight intrinsic, and dare I say objectively, it is the best dueling 140 round per minute hand cannon in the game. So for me, weapons, it really just comes down to whether or not there will be a replacement for it directly. And for me, in my vault, and I know I'm sounding pretty hypocritical here because my vault is straight up slam full of stuff, but I wouldn't go through there and just start killing and destroying all of your god rolls because tier 5 loot is going to replace everything you have. It's not going to be a quick transition. But when it comes to armor, things do get a bit messy. You see, these stat changes are a deliberate way of making us make tough decisions. Bungie wants us more intentional with how we allocate our stat points. You're not going to have a situation where people are running around with 200 stats in weapons, health, super, and grenades all at once. And currently with our stats inside of Destiny, you see the quad 100s. People do everything they can to get to that point. And yes, it's sexy to look at, but inside of Edge of Fate, if you're lucky and you get good rolls, you'll be able to get at least 2 stats to 200. But it would be impractical due to the impact it would have on your other stats. Shout out to Benny for doing the math on this one. The only way you're going to get there is by getting high tier armor. The old stuff won't cut it. Now, I feel some of you right now are already hitting the delete button on all of your armor. Stop. We're not saying to do that yet. Your current armor will still be used for quite a bit till we're able to lock down the high tier armor sets. If you plan on doing the day 1 raid, you're going to need some armor with the appropriate stat distributions to tackle that content. Because I don't think any of us are going to be touching tier 5 armor sets before the day 1 raid. Now, alongside all of this, our power level is also being changed as well. We are all going to start off at level 10, and we're going to need to work our way up to 200, which is now the new power cap. Now from 10 to 200, this should feel pretty familiar as you get better higher level gear to drop by playing. You can infuse that gear into your old gear if you desire, then past power 200. You'll need the new unstable core if you want to infuse gear, including your older gear. All gear acquired past power 200 works towards increasing our season power bonus, which used to be tied directly to our artifact, but that's no longer the case. Now, something to note is that these unstable cores will expire at the end of each season, meaning you can't hoard thousands of cores between seasons. You'll need to get out there and grind for more. Now, how you actually go about getting higher power gear is just simply by doing hoarder content. You get higher power, and then you get higher tier gear. There's certainly more nuance to it all, but that could be an entire video by itself. But essentially, do harder content, get better gear. Now, knowing all of this, I return us back to the question that we posed at the beginning of this video. Is your vault worthless now? Like I mentioned earlier, I don't want you to go through your vault and just nuke literally everything that you own because it's not quote unquote new or tier 5. What I will say though is that if you have some armor pieces in your vault, and if it's not 1900s, if it's not even masterworked, and if it doesn't have a stat distribution that you see will transition to the current layout going into Edge of Fate, at least in the way that you want it, then it's probably safe to delete. Weapons though are a completely different story. For example, a God Roll Hezen's Vengeance with Envious Arsenal and Element of Honing with that Time Loss Magazine Origin trait, that's still going to be the strongest rocket launcher in the game, unless Bungie does something about the Origin trait or nerfs these rockets going into Edge of Fate. I don't care if there's a tier 5 version of a rocket with that same trait combination. There's no way in hell I'm going to get it in time before the day 1 raid. And at the same time, even if I could get it, why delete what I already have? Why not use my God Roll that I currently have, which may be the equivalent of a tier 3? To secure me that tier 5 version. And the other side of things is that we don't even know if the tier 5 version is even gonna have these same perk combinations. And as we mentioned above, that is the most important factor when it comes to your weapons. There's a reason why even if you grind trials for an entire weekend and you lock down a 5 out of 5 God Roll, but it's not adept, you're gonna keep that 5 out of 5 God Roll and you're gonna shred those adepts. So I would be very selective with what you delete when it comes to your weapons in your vaults. Gear though, that is a completely different story. And it definitely seems Bungie is aggressively moving us in that direction to adopt the new armor system. Now, besides all the inherent benefits that we went over for both weapons and armor, there's also something new being introduced with Edge of Fate. That being new gear bonuses, which you could see when looking at your artifact. These will give you straight up bonuses to both your damage resistance as well as weapon damage when using new gear, which is determined by this blue icon on the left corner of your weapons or armor. Now, this is pretty crazy and where some people have been rubbed the wrong way with these changes. For example, when using new armor, you could get up to 15% damage resistance just for using that season's armor. The same goes for weapons, as equipping a heavy from the season would provide a 15% damage bonus, and according to Mossy Max, who referenced Kakis's video, this would be a 10% bonus damage at launch, and that will apply to that heavy weapon. So again, your old gear will still be useful for a pretty long while, especially when you're trying to level your power. But once we reach in-game content, we're going to have to change things out. I'm really curious to see how this is going to apply to day 1 raid because the turnaround for that is so fast that I'm actually really curious to know how these systems are going to apply to it. If that's the case, it's going to be a very hard sell to keep us using old gear when new gear is going to provide such good passive benefits. Bungie doing contest mode for day 1 raids was their way of correcting the whole power grind to attempt the day 1 raid. It was to level the playing field so that everyone could jump into that experience. But if they go this route, this means that the folks that are literally going to dedicate, I don't know, 80 to 100 hours going into that day 1 raid will have a substantial advantage. We're still going to have the power grind leading up to the day 1 raid to at least meet the minimum threshold, but then we're going to have seasonal weapons and armor that may end up giving us 15% extra damage or damage resist. And in a day 1 setting, guys, that can literally be the difference between who makes it and who doesn't. So guys, I know this is a lot. TLDR, don't delete all of your gear, but a little bit of spring cleaning wouldn't hurt, which is exactly what I'm doing. I will say the sooner we get more information from Bungie on this, the better. Even if it's information that some of us may not want to hear. They come out and say, hey, the day 1 raid experience will require you to grind to a certain power level. And on top of that, if you really want to be super optimal, you will need to get those armor pieces with those passive benefits. All right then, fellas, we ain't sleeping, man. With that being said though, for your weapons specifically, it's the roll that ultimately matters. And what is a God roll today, unless Bungie comes out and directly addresses that specific weapon, archetype, or perk combinations, that God roll will still be a God roll, which is essentially me giving you my blessing to keep all 200 ergo sums that you've saved up over the past year. Actually, don't do that. Check out Blue Ingram, guys. Please go check out this site. You can see which ones are your duplicates, both for ergo sums and exotic class items. That's a great way to just free up some space. If you're sitting on a bunch of dupes, get rid of them. But me, myself, guys, I'm not a fan of regrinding things, especially god rolls. But hey, it's your vault. Some of you have been very proud of yourselves posting up pictures of your vault now being 100 out of 700, which I think is fantastic. If anything, guys, delete everything you got. For the day one raid, this would be fantastic, as you've essentially eliminated yourself before the raid even began. No, but for real, keep those god rolls, guys. Don't nuke anything just yet. Be selective with your armor, and hopefully Bungie comes out with some more information. And by God, can we get a tease of what the hell the vault solution is going to be going into Renegades. That's it, guys. Those are our thoughts. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.